It began like a dream come true, one humanity had waited for since the dawn of science. For years, people had looked at the night sky, wondering if someone out there was watching back. When the signal came, it didn't bring fear at first. It brought hope, excitement, and a sense that humanity had finally stepped into the future. But hope turned to horror the moment the skies filled with light. Not stars, but ships. Dozens, then hundreds of them appeared in Earth's orbit, moving with precision no human fleet could match. Governments tried to make contact, sending messages of peace, friendship, and diplomacy. None were answered. Within hours, satellites blinked out one by one, as if invisible hands were plucking the planet's voice from space. Then came the silence, the kind that doesn't just fill the air, but sinks into the soul. The world's defense systems went dark. Communications failed. Cities around the globe lost power and chaos followed. People rushed into the streets, staring at the glowing crafts hanging above like silver clouds. Some prayed, others cried, and a few tried to record it on their phones, as if capturing history could somehow stop it. But when the first beam fell, the illusion of safety shattered. It wasn't a weapon that looked like any known missile or bomb. It was a pulse, a single flash that leveled an entire military base without sound. Panic swept across continents. Every country scrambled its defenses, but their missiles never reached the targets. The enemy's technology was beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Yet, even as the world trembled, something powerful began to stir. Soldiers who lost their command still fought on instinct. Civilians pulled others from the rubble. Scientists refused to stop working, even when their labs were destroyed. In every corner of the Earth, people who had never met began helping one another, driven by something stronger than fear: survival. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its machines or missiles. It was its spirit, that unbreakable spark that refused to die. As days turned into nights filled with fire, a strange calm settled in. The initial panic gave way to resolve. People began whispering one word: fight, not for revenge, but for existence. Across the burning cities, resistance started to take form in the most unexpected places. In basements, in mountains, in the hearts of those who refused to kneel. The alien ships hovered above, silent and unshakable, confident in their victory. But they had made a mistake that history would never let them forget. They thought they had come to conquer a species. What they found instead was humanity. Defiant, wounded, but still standing, ready to show the galaxy what it truly meant to be alive. The invasion grew faster than anyone could imagine. Within hours of the first attack, every government on Earth realized the same bitter truth. No single nation could survive this alone. For the first time in human history, rival armies, old enemies, and distant nations came together under one command. Generals who had never spoken before now stood side by side, sharing what little they had left. Across the globe, humanity united not under one flag, but one purpose: survival. Fighter jets soared into the skies. Warships moved into position, and soldiers prepared to defend the planet they called home. But unity, as powerful as it was, faced an enemy beyond comprehension. The alien ships moved like shadows, silent, precise, and impossibly fast. Missiles fired toward them only vanished before impact, swallowed by some invisible shield. Fighter jets flew into formation, but within minutes they were gone, erased from radar and sky alike. Cities with the most advanced defense systems became nothing more than glowing scars on the Earth's surface. Satellites, once humanity's eyes and ears, were plucked out of orbit one by one. The oceans boiled under beams of light that tore through fleets like paper. The world's greatest weapons, weapons that once symbolized power, were nothing more than fireworks to the invaders. And yet, through the destruction, a strange kind of courage began to grow. People realized that even though the fight seemed hopeless, giving up was worse. Soldiers who had lost their units refused to retreat. Pilots flew missions they knew they wouldn't return from. Engineers rebuilt communication lines using scraps of broken equipment. Across the smoking ruins, people whispered to one another, not in fear, but in defiance. "We're still here." It became more than a phrase. It became a promise, When the global command fell silent after a final desperate broadcast, the world seemed lost. But underground, in hidden shelters and dark tunnels, small groups began to rise. Scientists who had lost their labs worked by candlelight. Farmers shared food with strangers. Radio operators began sending coded messages, short, rhythmic signals that carried hope across continents. From the mountains to the cities, people began organizing. They had no armies, no ships, and no advanced weapons. But what they did have was something far more dangerous to any invader: unity fueled by pain, faith, and fury. The aliens thought Earth had fallen. They didn't realize that the real battle was only beginning, not in the skies or seas, but in the hearts of the survivors. Humanity had been beaten, yes, but not broken. The world burned, but from its ashes, something unshakable was rising, a resistance that no fleet, no weapon, and no empire could ever truly destroy. The world above had fallen silent, cities turned to ash, governments erased, and the skies ruled by alien shadows. But deep beneath the surface, humanity was far from defeated. In the dark tunnels under mountains, inside abandoned subway systems, and even beneath the cold waves of the ocean, small pockets of survivors began to organize. They were not soldiers trained for war. They were scientists, engineers, doctors, and farmers. But they all shared the same fire burning in their hearts, the desire to take back their home. When the world's armies could no longer fight, ordinary people became the defenders of Earth. Hidden resistance camps began to appear across the globe. Each one was a secret city of hope, built from the wreckage of the old world. Broken fighter jets were turned into laboratories. Crushed satellite pieces became tools for new inventions. Every scrap of metal, every piece of alien debris was used for something. Humanity had lost its technology, but it had not lost its imagination. Engineers studied the remains of alien drones, searching for weaknesses. Hackers worked tirelessly, breaking into alien communication signals. What they found changed everything. The invaders weren't as perfect as they seemed. Their systems could be disrupted, their energy shields overloaded, and their ships blinded, even if only for moments. And in those small windows of weakness, humanity saw possibility. Each resistance cell worked in silence, careful to stay hidden from the alien patrols that scanned the Earth. People lived without light to avoid detection, surviving on whatever food they could grow underground. Messages were passed using coded tones, old radio bursts, and even hand-carried notes. The risk of discovery was always there. One wrong move meant death for everyone in the bunker. Yet no one stopped. They kept working, night after night, because they knew one truth: survival was no longer enough. Revenge was coming. In one underground base, a group of engineers built a weapon from melted scrap metal, a railgun that could fire a single shot strong enough to pierce an alien hull. In another, scientists managed to send a virus into the enemy's communication network, turning their commands into noise for a few seconds. It wasn't much, but it proved one thing: the enemy could bleed. And once humans learned that, everything changed. They didn't have fleets or armies. They didn't have shining armor or massive ships. But they had something the aliens could never understand: the strength to rise again after every fall. The resistance grew, quietly but steadily, spreading like roots under the earth. And somewhere in that darkness, the first spark of the counterattack was born. A spark that would soon light the fire of a new war, not for power, but for survival, honor, and the right to call Earth their home again. In the middle of all the chaos, one night deep inside an underground control room, a small team of resistance hackers caught something unusual, a faint alien signal that wasn't meant for human ears. It was heavily encrypted, layered with strange sounds and digital patterns that seemed impossible to break. For days, they worked in silence, decoding piece by piece, their eyes burning under dim lights. When the message finally became clear, Everyone in the room froze. It wasn't a command or a battle plan. It was a warning from one alien commander to another. The message said the humans were dangerous because they do not act within logic. That one line changed everything. For the first time, the resistance realized the truth. The invaders feared them. Not because of their weapons or numbers, but because humans were unpredictable, emotional, stubborn, and full of something that couldn't be measured or controlled. The aliens couldn't understand why humans kept fighting when all odds were against them. They couldn't understand sacrifice or how love, anger, and hope could turn weakness into strength. To the invaders, humans were supposed to surrender, yet they kept rising again. That confusion was more powerful than any missile. Word of the intercepted message spread across the underground network. Old radio stations, once used for music and news, were brought back to life. Resistance groups across the planet started sending one message on every frequency they could reach. Make them remember who we are. It wasn't a command. It was a promise. Across the ruins of cities and shattered lands, people began to believe again. Hope returned, not as a bright light, but as a quiet flame that grew stronger in every human heart. Farmers in hiding started feeding soldiers. Mechanics began repairing old drones and trucks to carry supplies. Even the injured refused to stop. They helped from their hospital bunks, writing codes or sending messages. Everyone had a role, no matter how small. Humanity had found something that no weapon could destroy: unity. It didn't matter what language they spoke or where they were from. They were all fighting for the same sky, the same home. The invaders kept advancing, thinking they were close to total victory. But they didn't see what was happening beneath their feet, an invisible network of courage and determination connecting every survivor. The message kept echoing through the ruins. We are not done yet. That signal of hope, born from an alien fear, became the beating heart of humanity's resistance. Every human who heard it felt something awaken inside: pride, rage, love, and the unbreakable will to survive. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity stopped running. They started planning. The world was still burning, but now the fire belonged to them. The world had been silent for months, broken only by the low hum of alien ships that hovered in the sky. But one dawn that silence shattered. From the ashes of fallen cities came a signal, one word, repeated across every hidden radio and surviving channel: now. That single command set the world in motion. Underground bases came alive. Rusted factories lit up again as engineers powered ancient machines. What the aliens thought was a dying species was, in truth, an army waiting for its moment. Drones, once used for delivery and construction, were rebuilt into weapons. They rose from the smoke-filled streets like a swarm of metal bees, targeting the invaders above. In coastal ruins, old naval cannons were turned into makeshift railguns. Engineers had mounted them on towers, hidden under camouflage nets, waiting for this day. When the first alien cruiser exploded in the sky, people watching from the ground could hardly believe it. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had drawn blood. The alien fleet, confident in their dominance, scrambled to respond. But the attack came from everywhere: rooftops, tunnels, deserts, forests, even from underwater bunkers. It wasn't an organized army in the traditional sense. It was chaos, but it was human chaos, creative, unpredictable, and unstoppable. Civilians who had never held weapons before fought side by side with soldiers. Farmers used tractors to haul missiles. Children helped carry supplies through tunnels. Doctors treated the wounded in old subway stations, turning every dark corner into a line of defense. The aliens fired back, raining destruction from the sky, but their precision failed against human unpredictability. Every time they destroyed a target, 3 more appeared from another direction. What had once been cities of despair were now alive with defiance. For the first time, alien command ships hesitated before entering Earth's atmosphere. One fleet, heavily damaged and losing control, began to retreat toward orbit. Humanity had done the impossible. They had forced the invaders to back away. In the ruins, people cheered through tears and exhaustion. It wasn't a full victory, not yet, but it was something greater than hope. It was proof. Proof that the enemy could bleed, that their shields could break, that their arrogance had limits. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had shifted. Across the planet, resistance leaders marked this day as the turning point. The world was still broken, but now it had a heartbeat again. Fires burned in the distance, but they were no longer symbols of loss. They were signals, beacons of humanity's rage and will. The aliens might have had superior machines, but humans had something no technology could replicate: the refusal to disappear quietly. And as the night fell over the battered earth, every survivor looked up at the sky, whispering the same words with pride. "We are not finished." For the first time in history, every border, flag, and language became one. Humanity, once divided by politics and pride, now stood united under a single purpose: survival. The skies that once carried warplanes from rival nations now carried hope. Engineers in Japan worked day and night with pilots from Africa, creating hybrid aircrafts made from both alien wreckage and human technology. In India, scientists decoded alien frequencies while sharing their data live with researchers in Europe, where soldiers waited for new strategies. The oceans, once seen as barriers, became bridges. Submarines from different countries shared sonar signals and coordinated attacks, protecting convoys of survivors. Every mind, every hand, every heart worked toward one goal: to take back the sky. What once separated people, race, wealth, power, now meant nothing. Soldiers who had never met before trusted each other with their lives. Old enemies shared meals in trenches, scientists shared secrets once guarded for decades, and leaders realized that no nation could survive if the rest of the world fell. Humanity learned to fight not as countries, but as one species. Every small victory was celebrated across continents. When one team disabled an alien drone network over the Pacific, cheers erupted from underground bases thousands of miles away. When engineers managed to reactivate an old weather satellite and turn it into a communications hub, the world's remaining forces reconnected. After months of silence, the global radio channels buzzed again with human voices, tired but unbroken. Above, the alien fleets regrouped, unable to understand how this fragile species had reorganized so quickly. To them, unity was illogical. They had expected humans to destroy each other when pressed, not stand together. But what they didn't understand was that humanity had always evolved through struggle. Every war, every disaster, every fall had taught humans to rise again. It was in their nature to adapt, to rebuild, and to believe even when belief seemed foolish. The invaders had technology built from centuries of peace. Humans had strength forged from centuries of pain. Soon the skies began to change. Swarms of new hybrid aircraft, powered by both human invention and alien salvage, took off from hidden bases around the world. Old satellites were reprogrammed and turned into weapons, firing bursts of electromagnetic energy that blinded alien ships. Cities once dark began to glow again, not with luxury lights, but with resistance beacons. From above, Earth no longer looked defeated. It looked alive. As dawn broke, a global broadcast played the same message across every device, in every language. We are one sky, we are one people, and we will never bow. In that moment, every human, soldier, farmer, scientist, and child, felt the same fire in their hearts. The invaders had come to conquer a divided planet, but what they faced now was something far more powerful: a united world, reborn from its own ashes. Far beyond the dark clouds of Earth, hidden behind the moon, the resistance discovered something that changed everything: the alien command node. It wasn't just another ship. It was the heart of their entire invasion, the nerve center controlling every drone, every fighter, and every orbital weapon. If they could destroy it, the fleets would fall silent. But reaching it meant passing through a web of defenses strong enough to shred anything that came close. The mission seemed impossible. Still, humanity had come too far to stop now. The resistance leaders gathered in an underground bunker, staring at the holographic projection of the alien structure. Silence filled the room as they realized what had to be done. This would be a one-way trip. The people who went up might never come back. Yet when the call for volunteers went out, hundreds stepped forward without hesitation. Pilots, engineers, mechanics, and even medics who had already lost everything but hope. Preparations began in complete secrecy. The plan was codenamed Silent Dawn. The Resistance worked tirelessly, modifying the few remaining spacecraft they had. They weren't sleek or beautiful. They were patched together from debris, old rockets, and alien wreckage. But every bolt, every panel, every circuit carried a piece of human determination. Deep within hidden hangars, the volunteers trained for days that felt like hours. They learned to fly without guidance, to fight without fear, and to think like the enemy. Each of them knew they wouldn't return, but none of them complained. They weren't fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to make sure humanity did. The night before the launch, Earth stood still. Across ruined cities, people gathered around flickering screens to watch the mission countdown. Children held candles, soldiers saluted the sky, and old radios whispered prayers. The world had never been so quiet. No sound, no cheering, just the heavy heartbeat of hope. When the engines roared to life, they echoed through valleys and empty streets like thunder. A handful of human ships rose through the smoke and clouds, piercing the sky with trails of light. The world watched them disappear beyond the stars, their silhouettes glowing against the moon. Up in space, the crew could see Earth shrinking behind them, a fragile blue light wrapped in shadow. For a moment, none of them spoke. The silence felt sacred, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. They knew that what they carried wasn't just explosives, it was the last dream of an entire species. Back on Earth, every survivor waited in anxious stillness, staring at the dark side of the moon where the fate of humanity now rested. The mission wasn't about victory anymore. It was about memory, about proving that even when the odds were impossible, humans would rise, fight, and reach beyond the sky. The ships vanished into the black void, and for the first time in history, the stars belonged to Earth again. The silence of space shattered the moment humanity's small fleet crossed into the alien armada's territory. What had been a peaceful, star-filled void now burned with flashes of light and trails of fire. The human ships were outnumbered 100 to 1, but not one of them hesitated. They moved like a single heartbeat, weaving through alien fire with precision and desperation. The first wave of attacks came fast, beams of energy slicing through the darkness, missiles tracking every movement. But humanity had learned. Their ships weren't built for power. They were built for survival. Each maneuver was unpredictable, every strike designed to confuse the enemy. When the aliens locked on, the humans were already gone, turning their small size into an advantage. Then came the moment they had planned for. The lead ship released a series of EMP bombs, human technology rebuilt from scavenged alien parts. The explosions were silent, but the result was devastating. Lights across the alien fleet flickered, engines died, and command links broke. The great unstoppable armada began to drift like ghosts in the void. From Earth, the Resistance listened to static-filled transmissions, holding their breath as cheers started breaking out across hidden bases. Humanity had just done the impossible. They had made the enemy stumble. But the mission wasn't over. The command ship still stood, a monstrous shadow orbiting near the moon, guarded by its last defense drones. The remaining human pilots pushed forward. Alarms blared across the alien channels, their once perfect system now cracking with panic. They weren't used to losing. Worlds had fallen before them without a fight. But Earth, this small, scarred planet, refused to die quietly. The humans breached the mothership's outer hull, guiding their vessels straight into the storm. Inside, gravity failed and systems screamed as they forced their way toward the command node. The aliens countered with desperate ferocity, but the humans didn't back down. Every explosion, every flash of light painted a story of defiance, a story that would echo long after the last ship burned. One of the Resistance's final ships managed to release its core weapon deep. Inside the alien vessel, a self-made EMP pulse strong enough to overload their systems permanently. The pulse spread like lightning, tearing through circuits and cutting the alien fleet's lifeline. Across the solar system, thousands of alien ships went dark, their weapons silenced mid-fire. The invaders, who had conquered galaxies, suddenly found themselves blind and broken. Earth had struck not with power, but with heart, with the kind of courage that no machine or strategy could ever match. As the remaining human ships drifted, their signals faded into the void, but the message was already clear. Humanity would not vanish. They had taken the universe's greatest army and brought it to its knees. The aliens, once unstoppable, now watched in stunned silence as the world they had called weak became the one they would never forget. The stars themselves seemed to whisper humanity's final words. "We are still here." As the alien command ship trembled and its systems began to fail, one final moment of clarity remained within the chaos. The resistance team, knowing their mission had succeeded, used the last fragments of power left in their communication systems to send a message across the stars. The voice that echoed wasn't filled with hatred or revenge. It was calm, powerful, and deeply human. "This is humanity," it said, the words carried through static and broken signals. "You came to erase us, but now you will remember our name." That single sentence, spoken in defiance, cut through every alien frequency across the galaxy. Fleets that once flew with pride suddenly froze in space, their communications filled with confusion and disbelief. On distant worlds, where alien commanders had celebrated early victories, the sound of that message arrived like a warning, an echo of strength from a world they had underestimated. Back on Earth, the skies were no longer filled with fire. The alien ships that once hovered above cities now drifted silently, their lights flickering out one by one. Humanity's remaining resistance bases received fragments of the broadcast, and as the message replayed again and again, people wept, not out of sadness, but pride. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth's people stood beneath a quiet sky, knowing they had earned that silence. Even those who had lost everything looked upward and whispered the same words, repeating them like a prayer. "You will remember our name." Across the galaxy, the message traveled further than any human ship ever could. It reached planets ruled by the same empire that had tried to conquer Earth. It reached distant colonies where alien leaders now hesitated, realizing that their unstoppable force had met something far stronger than technology. Fear spread among them, not of weapons but of willpower. The image of Earth's defiance became a legend, a warning whispered among star systems. Do not provoke the species that refuses to die. Humanity had carved its message not in stone or paper, but in the very network of the enemy's communication grid. It was eternal. Meanwhile, the surviving resistance members on Earth began emerging from their underground shelters, staring at the glowing horizon. The planet was scarred, cities ruined, but the light of hope was visible again. It was faint but unbreakable. Children who had grown up under the shadow of invasion saw their parents smile for the first time in years. People started rebuilding, not just homes, but faith. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't just survival. It was remembrance. They had proved that no matter how small or broken they seemed, their spirit could shake empires. As night fell, the blue light of Earth shimmered through the darkness of space, brighter than it had in centuries. It was no longer a silent planet waiting to be conquered. It was a name written across the stars, a name that even the strongest in the galaxy would never forget. Humanity had spoken, and the universe had listened. Years passed, and the scars of war slowly faded from Earth's surface. The once ruined cities rose again, stronger and more united than before. Streets that had once echoed with fear now filled with laughter, learning, and hope. The next generation grew up not under the shadow of invasion, but beneath the light of victory. Schools taught not just history, but unity, the story of how humanity had stood together when everything seemed lost. Children learned about the dark days when the sky burned red, but also about the courage that turned that darkness into dawn. They listened wide-eyed as teachers spoke of the brave people who had fought not for glory or power, but for the survival of all humankind. In every corner of the world, memorials stood, not of generals or leaders, but of ordinary people. Engineers, medics, farmers, and teachers all had played a part. The message engraved on every monument was the same. We stood together, and the stars remembered. The meaning was simple yet powerful. Humanity had not only defended its planet, it had defended its identity. The invasion that once threatened to erase them had instead united them in a way history had never seen. No longer divided by borders or language, people saw themselves as one, not just citizens of nations, but children of Earth. The stars above, once symbols of fear, now inspired wonder again. Instead of watching the skies for danger, humanity began reaching for them with purpose. Space exploration was no longer a dream for the future. It was the legacy of survival. New ships were built, not for war, but for discovery. Scientists and explorers ventured beyond the solar system, carrying with them not weapons, but the story of who they were, the species that refused to kneel. And across the galaxy, that story spread. On distant worlds, civilizations whispered the name humanity with respect, some with fear, others with admiration. What began as an invasion ended as a legend. The invaders' descendants, generations later, spoke of Earth not as a conquered planet, but as the world that fought back against impossible odds. They taught their own young that there are battles that cannot be won through force, only through spirit. Humanity had shown the universe that courage was not in numbers or weapons, but in unity and heart. As the sun rose over a healed Earth, people looked toward the stars with quiet pride. They no longer feared the unknown. They had faced it and they had triumphed. Humanity was no longer just a planet lost in the vastness of space. It had become a symbol, a story of endurance and strength written in fire across the sky. And every being, on every world that heard their story, remembered one truth. When the galaxy attacked, humanity didn't just survive, they made the universe remember who they were.